Hello and welcome to Mississippi Insight. I'm Byron Brown. Thank you for joining us. This week, city, state, and federal leaders try to get on the same page in addressing Jackson's water crisis. There's been a lot of positive news in the last week, but what's the long-term plan going to be for fixing the city's aged water system? We'll hear from two newsmakers this week. State Senator John Horhn weighs in on the Jackson delegation's push for a long-term fix, and former Jackson Mayor Harvey Johnson offers his perspective. That's coming up this morning on Mississippi Insight. More than 40 days into the City of Jackson's boil water advisory, it's still not clear when that alert might be lifted. But the effort to shore up Jackson's water system did make progress over the last week, especially in restoring water pressure to more than 160,000 customers across Hinds County. Authorities say investigative sampling has begun, but the system overall was not ready for full sampling at last report, and the city needs 2 consecutive rounds of clean samples across the system before the boil advisory can be lifted. Jackson and state leadership has worked to keep citizens informed of the multi-agency mission of restoring clean drinking water in Jackson and beyond. These comments from Governor Tate Reeves, Mayor Chokwe Anchalamumba, and EPA Administrator Michael Regan came from a news conference at Jackson State University on Wednesday.
You know, our concern is obviously the immediacy and ensuring that we respond to this emergency in a way that assures the people of Jackson that they will have access to good quality drinking water. But we also talked about midterm solutions as well. And we're putting together a construct by which state, federal, and local entities can come together and access the resources that we believe are available to the people of Jackson. The state of Mississippi will receive more than $26 million in SRF funds in 2022, and that's on top of $30 million that's available in 2021 loan funds for Jackson. And that is also in addition to $13 million that is currently in an existing capacity as well.
We've said that the fixes at the plant were certainly, at least over the last 10 days, could be defined in the thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars. But we know that here in the city, as well as in virtually every jurisdiction across America, there is aging infrastructure that has to be dealt with. And much of the conversation today was about unleashing and unlocking monies that are available through the traditional funding sources as well as through other sources as well. So a good, productive conversation with the administrator, with the mayor, with the members of the federal delegation, and I appreciate Administrator Regan for being here on the ground in Jackson, Mississippi to have those conversations.
One of the things that was most important to me was the component of us continuing to lean in together. Making certain that we have some frequency of discussion to make certain that everything is flowing as it should and that we can see the ultimate improvements to O.B. Curtis and, more importantly, just the water distribution system of Jackson being sustainable, being reliable, and important to me, being equitable across the city.
Jackson's legislative delegation put pressure on state leadership to intervene in the city's crisis. One of those delegates is John Horhn, a state senator representing citizens in Hinds and Madison counties. We spoke with the senator last week, and he made it clear that whatever the mayor has said, there is no detailed plan for dealing with our age system, and that needs to change.
We need a detailed plan that speaks to fixing long-term our drinking water system, our wastewater system, and our billing and collections. We've got to do it all comprehensively. It can't be piecemeal, and it's got to be long-term.
What the mayor has put out, what do you call that? He calls it a plan, but you're not calling it a plan?
I have not seen the document the mayor is talking about. It has not been presented to the entire delegation, if it's been presented to the delegation at all. So I don't know what he's talking about.
And when you talk about a plan, define a plan, because I mean, there's this back and forth between all the other politicians and then the mayor's office about a plan.
Well,
I think the public's like this tit for tat here. What's going on?
Yeah, and I think we're trying to work as a team, and we need to be working as a team to fix this thing short term and long term. But if we're going to put a plan together to do what is estimated by some to be about a $2 billion fix, we need a detailed plan. It's a plan on how we're going to fix long-term our drinking water. The estimates are somewhere around $700 million to fix that. We have a $940 million price tag on fixing our wastewater. We don't know what it's going to cost to fix our billing and collection system because it's a moving target. We have meters that work, some that don't work. We have a lot of stranded customers that aren't getting bills. We've got to fix the whole thing, and you need a plan this thick. Now, I have not seen a plan this thick coming from anybody, and so we're anxious, and we've been encouraging the city to work as fast as it can to put a plan together. But as of yet, I'm not aware of any plan. I've not seen any plan.
And who is responsible for that plan? Does it come from the mayor's office, come from the council, or will the state have to step in and create the plan?
Well, that's a good question. I think it's in the city's best interest to come up with a transparent, cohesive, strategic plan. It's in the city's best interest to do it. If the city doesn't do it, then it's going to be done for the city. And I think that the city runs the risk of losing some amount of control over this water system and the whole water sewer administration if we let the state come up with the plan or if we let the federal government come up with the plan. The city needs to come up with a strategic plan.
When we say coming up with a plan, is there a time frame? Because right now the fixes that you have are temporary, not permanent. What's the time frame to come up with a plan so that the citizens can move forward?
Well, the Mississippi State Department of Health is in charge of our drinking water system right now. And they say that they're going to be there for about 120 days, maybe 4 months. Well, in 4 months, we're going to be in our legislative session. And if the city of Jackson has not come up with a cohesive plan by the time we hit the first of the year and we go into a new regular session of the legislature, it's not going to look good. And I think at that point, the state is going to say, look, you guys have been working at this thing for 25 years, and you don't have a cohesive plan yet, and you don't have the capacity to put this thing in action without a lot of help from the federal government, from the state government. But we got to know what we're planning towards. We need a plan.
The MississippiToday.org has reported that there are essentially 4 options for managing the upgrading of Jackson's water system: creating the regional water authority, taking over the system, the state conservatorship for some period of time, forming a new state agency to run the system permanently, or privatizing the system by hiring a third-party firm to run it. What's your preference, and do you support any of those options?
My preference would be that the city of Jackson hold on to its most precious asset right now, which is its water sewer administration. Even though it's losing money, we're having to prop it up with about $20 million in general funds and special funds each year. At one time, this water system was throwing off $7 million in profit. But even with that, it's our most valuable asset. And so I would prefer that the city, which has shown that it does not have the capacity to run the system itself right now, that the city hire a transparent, very capable third-party administrator. Now, depending on where the city gets its resources from, if it's the state may say, well, wait a minute now, we have some say in this, and we have some other ideas about how we're going to do that. But I would prefer that the city come up with a plan, the city identify where it's going to get its resources, hopefully the majority of which will come from the federal government, and then put a third-party administrator in place to work the plan.
Explain how we went from having a profitable water system making $7 million to a losing water system where we are now today.
Well, a lot of it has to deal with a lot of repairs that have had to be made over the course of the last 20, 25 years, 30 years. And that has eaten into the resources of the city, of the Water Sewer Administration. Then we had a huge problem with collections. We're only collecting about half the money we should be collecting from our Water Sewer Administration. And when you lose that much money, and on top, you put that on top of the fact that we're about to lose, we're losing the revenue from West Rankin, which accounts for 30% of our wastewater revenue. We're losing money. And so you can't rob Peter and pay Paul forever. At some point, the chickens will come home to roost, and the chickens are coming home to roost now.
And why is it a problem? Why is the city struggling with collection? Why can't they get that? It's been going on for years. Why are they struggling with collecting water
Well,
bills?
the Siemens project was supposed to solve all that. It was supposed to provide a means whereby we'd have a more accurate system of calculating bills through new meters that were supposed to be electronically savvy enough to where we could get accurate measurements and all that. It was an ultimate failure. And so trying to respond and recover from that has been more than a notion. So we're not collecting as much money as we should be. We're not billing as much as we should be. There's a lot of collectible money that's out there that we aren't collecting because we don't have the intestinal fortitude, if you want to call it that, to say, look, you got to pay your bill or you're going to get cut off. But we have a system whereby if you cooperate with the city, the legislature did a bill last year to provide the city with the means where it can help ratepayers who are having trouble with their payments, being able to make payments and keep up. And where we would provide a means, if you pay your bill 3 months in a row, you can get on this program where a certain portion of your bill is set aside if you show the inability to pay. That program has never been put in place because the city, for whatever reasons, has not properly and has not successfully implemented the program.
But a lot of Jackson residents don't trust the billing system. They're getting these exorbitant water bills. So there's some of them saying, I'm not going to pay because you can't bill me properly. So how can you get confidence from citizens that, hey, I should pay my bill when I can't even get a proper bill?
Again, we provided some legislation to give the city a means of doing that. But the trigger for being able to implement a system like that is you have to have the threat of cutoff. And some folks will have to be cut off to get folks in line to say, hey, they're serious this time. We got to do it. So let me participate in this program. And so we have not seen a successful implementation of that program because the ratepayers don't believe the city is serious when it says we're going to cut you off.
Thank you very much, Senator.
Thank you, Byron.
Pleasure talking to you. Coming up, a former mayor of the capital city offers his perspective on Jackson Water. It's Mississippi Insight, only on WJTV. Harvey Johnson was mayor of Jackson from 1997 to 2005 and again from 2009 to 2013. As you can imagine, water was an issue even then. We spoke to him last week about the city emergency and what leadership needs to be doing now to fix the problem.
Well, I think there needs to be a long-term plan on how resources can be dedicated to improving the water and sewer systems here in the city of Jackson. And that's not just local resources, that's state and federal. There are a number of things that the state can do. The city has been asking for a payment in lieu of taxes for 30 years or more. And that's in place in a number of state capitals and states across the country where state government actually makes a payment to the capital city because state government typically occupies some very valuable land and their property is very valuable. The buildings are very valuable, and so in lieu of paying taxes, they make a payment annually to the state capital. Well, that could be used here in the city of Jackson for the state to help fund some of the water and sewer improvements that are required. And O.B. Curtis, I think, is just the tip of the iceberg. The system needs to be attended to overall. That's distribution lines, storage, as well as supply and treatment.
What's your thoughts on who should control the system?
Well, I mean, I don't think that it was ever intended for the state to be in the water sewer business. I mean, that I don't, and I think, and I hope that the governor would agree to that. I think that given adequate resources, that responsibility should fall on the city of Jackson as it is now. The citizens of our city look to their local elected officials to provide them with municipal services, and clearly one of the most critical municipal services that's provided by local government is water, and so it would be a different model, if you will, for the state to take over the water system and put it under conservatorship like they perhaps would do with a school district.
Do you believe that the citizens will be able to have confidence that the water system will be fixed and that these constant boil water notices will pop up, or that they can trust that they'll have sustainable water?
You know, I don't know. I mean, I think that the media has done a great job in covering the situation in terms of the condition of the system, and I think that has the citizens have used that as a way of collecting information on whether the system is working, whether it's not working, whether the water is bad or whether water is good. I think it's going to be a long-term process, but I think you begin by having a plan to upgrade the system and then start funding that plan. And I think citizens eventually will come around to see that the plan is working, but there has to be the resources available to fund the plan. It's going to take time for citizens to gain confidence again in the water system, simply because of what has happened over in recent times. If we don't get adequate resources, we still have to deal with other parts of the system besides treatment, which is fuel and O.B. Curtis. There are distribution lines. There are over 100 miles of distribution lines that are undersized in the city of Jackson, that is less than 6 inches. It's those lines that typically break, those lines that have chemical content that causes discoloration in the water, and those lines that are the oldest in the system. So eventually they're going to have to be replaced as well.
Explain what a detailed plan would be, because Congressman Benny Thompson, the governor, even Lieutenant Governor all said that they need to see a very detailed plan in order to give out the money, state and federal dollars.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure how more detail we can get. The city started with a master plan. These detailed plans are called master plans. The city had a master plan that was prepared in 1985. It was updated again in 1997. It was updated again in 2012, in 2013. So I'm not sure what they're expecting. Perhaps, if they need more specific information, then we need to try to figure out what that is. But it's not correct. It's inaccurate to say that the city does not have a plan. The city has a master plan. Now, whether it needs to be updated, whether it needs to be fine-tuned to satisfy the governor and satisfy the federal government, I don't know. But I do know we've had a master plan that was done and updated and upgraded by professional engineers over the years. And that plan calls for certain improvements to be done. It lays out the cost of those improvements and a time frame for making it happen. So I'm not sure what else is needed on the part of the state, and perhaps on the part of the city, and perhaps the state and the federal government can let us know that.
Should O.B. Curtis be replaced, or does it need to be repaired? And should fuel still be there, or do we need to?
Well, I mean, there was some talk of getting rid of fuel back when I was in office. We upgraded fuel because we needed to. According to the master plan in '97, about 75 million gallons per day was needed. 25 would come from fuel and 50 from O.B. Curtis. Then O.B. Curtis would be upgraded to produce 1 million gallons, 100 million gallons a day, and then fuel could be abandoned. But until that happens, you need both plants, because you need close to 100 million gallons a day, 70-some million, I think, to provide adequate water service to the citizens, including adequate fire protection.
Senator Wicker has been pushing that One Lake project to deal with the flood control along the Pearl River, and then he says at the bottom of that, the city of Jackson could build a new water treatment plant. Your thoughts on the One Lake and possibly putting a new water treatment plant?
I don't know. I mean, my recollection of the One Lake project was that most of the developable land would be on the Rankin County side, not on the Hinds County side. So I'm not sure about putting a water treatment plant on the Hinds County side that would take up valuable developable land. I think there could be other locations. I'm not an engineer, and this is the first I've heard of it, so I haven't given much thought to it. But my knee jerk would be that if One Lake does come about and there's going to be a limited amount of developable land on Hinds County side, I don't think that a water treatment plant ought to go on that development land. I think it should be commercial and/or residential, similar to what I'm sure they're planning over on Rankin County side.
Our thanks to Senator John Horhn and former Mayor Harvey Johnson for joining us this week. We'll be back next week and with more of the political and current affairs coverage that you demand. I'm Byron Brown. From all of us here at 12 News, make it a great weekend.